Welcome to episode 1 of the Generation to Generation podcast. This is a series that we hope will help you tackle some of the tough questions and issues that you have in helping your aging parents grow old gracefully. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith. I'm the editor of TC Jewfolk in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I am joined by Chris Kellogg, who is the Shalom educator for Shalom Home in the Twin Cities as well. Chris, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining me on this journey. And we are starting our journey, the 7-part journey, with Bonnie Jaffe. Bonnie is a registered nurse, and she is the care coordinator at Jewish Family Service of St. Paul here in Minnesota. And the topic for episode 1, Bonnie, is aging in place. So I guess for starters, for those who don't totally understand what that means, what is aging in place?
So I'll just give you a brief, definition. Aging in place is a term used to describe a person living in the home of their choice for as long as they're able to as they age. This can include being able to have any services or other supports that they might need over time as their needs change. Also, to be clear, the act of aging in place takes place during a period of time in an elderly person's life where they can have the things that they need in their daily life while maintaining their quality of life.
So typically, is there an age or is there a stage in aging where a family will come to you and say, help?
Yes. Many times people come very late to me when there's sort of a crisis. So, for instance, somebody that has mild dementia, they might come to me and say, oh my gosh, we don't know how long mom could stay in their home. So basically, I assess the situation and see, well, if they're I had a situation recently where somebody had some mild cognitive issues, and we were able to keep her in her home for another 6 months. Fortunately for that particular person, she was very open to moving into an assisted living facility where she was able to get more services and more help because she was a very friendly person and feeling very isolated. The opposite could be true, where people don't want to move out of their homes. So then I go into the home, assess what would be needed, and maybe place services in the home to make sure something like an aid to help with certain activities of daily living. Let's say the person was having trouble making meals for themselves. So that would be an area that an aid could help, or we could set up things like Meals on Wheels, which Shalom in our community is doing at this point. So those are a few things that can be done.
One of the things that I hear often as people want to think about this pre-crisis is, so how do I know when it's time? What are the signs, basically, that I should be thinking about whether my parents should move?
Okay, so everybody's different. Everybody ages differently. And I just wanted to mention some just normal changes that happen with people that age. So we get reduced vision. We have sometimes decreased muscle strength and endurance, reduced mental processing abilities, increased risks of falls due to, maybe poor balance. We also increase our risk of illness as we age. Our immune system isn't what it was. Reduced hearing, reduced mobility. So I sort of look at those things and figure out what on that list is happening with the parent. It's always good to plan before, and I encourage families to always plan before. I mean, you can more easily age in place if we're looking at a couple that's in their 60s or 70s, because then we can anticipate changes and we can look at the home and we can look at the environment.
How early is too early to prepare?
Never too early. It's just never too early. I mean, it depends on if you're in your 50s and you know that you are not going to really want to move. You love your family home and that's where you want to stay. I know right now people look at their homes and they start to evaluate and reevaluate. People have, let's say, huge whirlpool, bathtubs. And when they start to get in their 50s and 60s, it's like, yeah, that's great, but I'm having a hard time climbing into that thing. So those are the times and those are the points where you start to maybe do that remodel and get rid of that tub and, put a shower in where you can access it easily. You can pull a wheelchair, shower chair into that space. So those are like little changes that people could do even in their 50s.
So what kind of things do you look at when you go in and help a family assess the current state of their parents' capabilities?
Okay, so there's two areas that are called activities of daily living, and then those areas are bathing, dressing, grooming, mouth care, toileting, transferring, walking, stairs, eating. They're all the normal things that all of us do. And so how well can that person do all of those things? Do they need help in any of those areas? And if there's help needed, we put the help in place. Then there's another area called instrumental activities of daily living. And those things are shopping, cooking, managing medications, using the phone or other devices, finding, resources, housework, laundry, driving or using other forms of transportation, and managing finances. That's sort of a much bigger area. And we find that people that are starting to decline or have problems will usually have problems in that area, typically something like driving. As we age, driving becomes a problem. So that's just an example of a problem area. So if I have somebody that is 90 years old and they're starting to say, like, I don't know that I could drive anymore, I say, oh, thank God. And then, I will get either a driving evaluation from Regents Hospital or Courage Kenny, or if they just want to give up their keys, then I will say, let's put you, on Metro Mobility, which is our state transportation. So people can go on Metro Mobility. It's a door-to-door ride. It's not seamless. There's problems with it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to wait a bit, but it's a safe way of getting around. And you can get to doctor's appointments and you can get to leisure activities.
And that's here in Minnesota and other. Do most states have some sort of version of Metro Mobility?
Yes, okay. Yes, most states do.
And I don't want to step too much on the driving thing because that is going to be an episode later in the season. But the example you mentioned of somebody, coming to you, for example, the 90-year-old and saying, I don't think I could drive anymore. Is it more common that happens or that it becomes more of a fight within the family to get the keys?
It's usually more of a fight within the family to get the keys. But I did just have recently a gentleman who is about 90, and I was just ever so able to kind of coax him and say, well, it's getting to be winter time now, and how about if we just set up Metro Mobility for you so that you don't have to go out and drive when it's, the weather conditions are bad. So he was very amenable to that. And, one of the other things I recommend for people as they're aging in place is, even if you are driving, why do you have to go to a pharmacy when there are wonderful pharmacies in St. Paul that actually deliver to your door? And so I try to have people kind of buy into that so that they get their prescriptions and, there's no cost to the delivery, and it's one less risky thing that they have to do, especially in the winter months in Minnesota.
Well, so that kind of leads into your role as a care coordinator. Describe that a little bit more.
My role as a care coordinator. So my job is to make sure that my clients are safe. So if they are aging in place, I have to make sure that, that they're safe, that all the services in their home, anything that I've set up is keeping them safe in their home. If their illnesses progress in any way, I have to look for other solutions. If the solutions sort of run out, then in many ways, it's time to find a different solution. And going into an assisted living, you're still in the community, and I still can set up, services for people in the community, even if they're in assisted living. And I follow those folks as well to make sure that they're getting all their needs met, even in assisted living. And I have people in nursing facilities. And basically, I make sure that in the nursing facilities, they're being cared for well. And my partners are the families, and I make sure that the families get the information they need.
So you actually go out and visit with people?
I visit with most of my clients, depending on what the goals are. So I set goals with every client that I begin with. And we meet the goals or have new goals, that will create when I see the client. It could be weekly, it could be biweekly. I followed people in TCUs, and I'll see them a few times a week.
So one of the things I've discovered as I started digging into all things senior in my role is that this is one of the best kept secrets in town, basically. And although it's not intended to be a secret, but people don't seem to be aware that this is a service out there in St. Paul, Jewish Family Services, in Minneapolis, Jewish Children and Family Services, and I'm sure most other cities have, if not a Jewish organization, another organization that offers this kind of service.
Yes, this case management is a little bit different than most case management. A lot of case management, you'll see a case manager once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. I kind of like to describe this case management as, there's basic building blocks in place if you can visualize a mosaic. So you have, big pieces in the mosaic, they're already in place. And then with this case management, there's all these teeny little tiny pieces that have to also be put in place to make it look really beautiful. So that's kind of what I like to think about when I do my work, that I'm putting all those little tiny pieces in there to make sure that everything flows and is consistent, mm-hmm. and my clients get the best care.
So what are some of the resources that people can find and that are available to them online? Because obviously the internet is a very big place that can be very complicated to find some of the more specific information. What's some stuff you recommend?
So there's what I do is also known as geriatric care management, and you can look at geriatric care managers online, and you can find information about that. Also, the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging. It's info at n4a.org. You could look them up. And also the federal government offers a lot of resources for seniors. So their website is longtermcare.gov. So those are three that you could start off with. And honestly, right in Minnesota, you could look up what's available for care coordination just in the Twin Cities.
Well, great. Well, Bonnie, thank you for joining us. Thank you for getting us started. We're looking forward to seeing all of the other ways that we can find out how to be helpful to those who are starting to think about this. So we appreciate all of your help in that.
Thank you.
The Generation to Generation podcast is sponsored by Shalom Home and produced by Jewfolk Inc. For more information, go to shalom.com, that's SHOLOM.com, or tcjewfolk.com/podcast.